going on?
Not much. You hear me all right?
I can't. Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you because you're in camo. I'm just jealous. I'm not wearing mine right now.
Dude, I got this thing from Perseverance Survival. It's called a Whoopee hoodie, and I spent $60 on a sweater, and I just thought it was going to be a terrible idea, and money well spent.
Say that again. A what hoodie?
A Whoopee?
A Whoopee hoodie.
Yep.
Okay.
So are you familiar with a Whoopee?
No, I'm not.
So a Whoopee is a poncho liner that you're issued in the military.
Okay.
So you get like a big old poncho for the rain, and then the inside of it, there's a blanket, for lack of a better term, and it's called a poncho liner. But for whatever reason, it's called a Whoopee. I don't know why.
It's kind of like a Snuggie, but you can wear it outside.
Yeah, right, except it can get rained on and wet and cold, and you still stay warm.
You know, that's exactly what I needed today. And I was kind of beating myself up for not having any kind of poncho or anything because first half of my trek today was in the rain, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad at all. So episode number 1, my friend.
I'm excited to do this. It's going to be great.
Yeah, to do this again. I was looking it up, and it's been about almost 4 years since you and I podcasted anything.
Wow. Time
flies, huh?
Yeah, time. Well, I know. I suppose they say time flies when you're having fun. I don't know when the fun's supposed to start, but time's definitely flying.
The fun starts now. And
perfect.
That's why we're doing this. So I guess for the first episode here, we need to talk about, who we are and how we got together, how we met, why we're doing this thing. So, Zach, why don't you tell the people a little bit about your background?
You want me to start from my birth, or do you want me to just talk about like my adult life?
Well, I was hoping you just say, well, I woke up this morning and
yeah, I hit a bong and I woke up here. No, I'm from. I was born and raised in Watertown, New York, till I was like 14, and then I moved out to a place called Lowville, up here near the Canadian border, and then I was in the service for about 6 years. And then I got out of the service, and I moved back to Watertown, and my wife and I are homeowners here. And we have 3 kids, been married almost 10 years. Those are the kind of the wave tops. I got out of the Navy and worked for the Kraft Heinz company, doing industrial sanitation. Did that for a couple of years. That was a bad idea. Don't ever want to do that again. And now I'm medically retired. So now I'm a full-time college student. Yeah, so I do that. As far as how we met at Played Against Sports off of Lynn Haven in Virginia Beach right around the time your book came out. You did a book signing.
Yeah. Yep.
And I walked up and I asked a question. I said, why should I buy your book? And you said something to the effect of, I don't give a fuck if you buy my book or not. And I was like, all right.
Best friends ever since.
So, yeah, that was just like, talk about raw. You walk up to a guy and you're like, dude, why should I buy your product? I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm like, give me one, son. Like, yeah, let's do this. So we exchanged phone numbers, started playing some golf, and then we podcasted about, Zen disc golf and just disc golf in general for quite a while there. And then with me working on the night shift and then going through all this medical bullshit, just fell off the face of the earth, man.
Right on. And I did too. So it is what it is, but it helps us to kind of create that space and create that gap. And now we're back, and we're not sort of as limited as we were when we were just doing the disc golf podcast. And we can go into that just a little bit later for people who maybe never heard of that. And that's okay, but we're moving on. This is a new page. I'm really into this quote that I started seeing all over the internet not long ago. It says, you can't write the new chapter of your life if you keep rereading the old chapter of your life. So that's what this is all about, moving on and kind of open up that window and talking about whatever we want to talk about. So you said you were in the Navy. Are you able to talk about anything that you did in the Navy, or is it all top secret?
Oh, no, I think it's pretty well-known information that the military has an intelligence arm. I did 2 years doing cyber warfare, and then I did 4 years as a human intelligence, counterintelligence agent. And for the lay person, that's interrogating, that's surveillance, counter surveillance, that's running sources. If you could think like Zero Dark 30 of people having sources, paying them money to talk to you, that kind of thing is fairly accurate. I'm not going to get into a lot of the who, what, when, where's, and why's. Just it was a pretty cool job. I gave a lot of myself to it, and yeah, I'm kind of beat up from it, but it was some of the best experiences, man. It was just, I think the Navy, between getting married, and joining the Navy are two things that really kind of saved my life.
Right on. Yeah, so, at least you've got stories. I don't know how often you want to tell your stories, but at least you have something that's that makes you special. You know what I mean? Like that you've done. You know what I'm saying? Like professionally. So I know that it was rough on you, and I can tell you a little bit about my background and how you and I kind of connect on a deeper level. Though I was not military, I am in the fire department. But we are able to kind of connect in that way, where we have stories, and stories that we probably too often keep to ourselves. And sometimes we have to, just because it's, you can't talk about some of the stuff that you've been through, and you definitely couldn't talk about it on a disc golf podcast.
No, not the time of the boys.
Now, this podcast is meant to be lighthearted too, but it really does open the doors of the different types of people that we can talk about. So I guess I'll give you a little bit about myself, just for those people who don't know me. I grew up on the East Coast of Virginia. You mentioned Virginia Beach. I grew up a little bit north of that. But I married my wife and I moved down to Virginia Beach. And when I was young, I started playing in bands and stuff at an early age, and I was working in recording studios. I was trying to keep it real and stay poor.
Yeah, that sounds like a musician. Yeah, and you were in what? It was like industrial, right?
Yeah, I did a lot of hardcore punk, industrial. I was all over the board. I ended up recording somewhere between like 40 and 50 records until the time I was 25. Some of those are still up on the Amazon and the iTunes and YouTube and all that. But I'm not here to promote records. When I was 25, I became a career medic firefighter. So it was about 12 years ago. Currently I'm a lieutenant in the fire department. I run recruit academies and officer academies. And I like to tell people that's where I teach men and women that the body can tolerate much more and perform much harder than they ever thought it,
that's a fact,
possibly could. That's my job, to make people hard, and I love it. So I'm married. I have one son. I live far away from everything on my 17.5 acre ranch. Now, when you and I were podcasting, when we were in the same room together doing work. I was in Virginia Beach. I was living in a house that had 0.3 acres. So I decided I need a little bit more space.
That's a lot smaller. Yeah, you got a heck of a lot more space now.
A little bit more space to stretch out, man. So, yeah, and as you mentioned before, I wrote some pretty successful books about disc golf, and still am blessed with that. But that's how we met. Today I kind of find pleasure in pushing my own mental and physical limits, doing whatever crazy stuff I can think of while I try to figure out how to calm my mind and relax. Relax is kind of a foreign word in my world. It's not necessarily a great thing. I'm an outdoors guy. I like to be outside a lot, and I just started a section hiking the trail. You and I touched base again because I was getting into archery, which is something that you're deeply passionate about, and hunting. So we're kind of reconnecting on that, which is awesome, to be able to have something else like that to talk about. And it just, I work hard, hardcore fitness. David Goggins is one of my heroes, and he talks about being uncommon amongst uncommon people. And I would say that's my number one goal. I don't want to ever be common amongst common people. I don't want to be common amongst uncommon people. I want to be uncommon amongst uncommon people, What does that saying mean to you, Zach?
Well, if I were talking about Pat McCormick, for me, you're a whole different breed of person, especially from where I'm from. Everybody's so similar here, in that they live in this little bubble, and I call it like a fishbowl effect. They live in this fishbowl, and they have no idea there's a stream out there, and that stream goes to a lake that's fed to a river, and so on and so forth. They don't even. And you're a guy that's worldly, and your breadth of experience, just learning from you about Zen principles. Buddha and Blue Jeans is one of the best books that you ever handed me. Thinking about that, talking about being uncommon. Yeah, I would say so. But uncommon typically leads you to be, some of the best people. And speaking about myself, one of my very best friends, Jake Newton is his name. He said I'm the most eclectic human being he's ever met in his life.
That's awesome. That's a good compliment.
And I took it as a compliment. He said, "You're like 100 different people rolled into one guy." He said, "I don't, just never know who you're going to get that day."
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes me schizophrenic or not, but
possibly
could be. But yeah, and I think about my family and the kind of folks that I come from, and I don't fit. I'm definitely a whole kind of different bird. And you've said it before, you enjoy my company because I can be extreme and I'm not boring.
Yeah.
We talk about, the other night, we got a blizzard here. And so, state of emergency, roads are shut down. What do? You throw on your wool, slap on snowshoes, go for a stroll in the blizzard just to see the chaos.
That's right.
So you just have a little fun. But, being uncommon I think it's important to me. You don't want to hang out with vanilla folks. Not that they're bad. I'm not trying to put anybody down. It's just, you don't want to hang out with somebody that's got no edge, man. And that's one thing that, we've been able to connect so well is that, trauma is trauma, right?
Right.
And, you're a firefighter and a medic and a teacher. And you come across so many experiences in those fields. And in my background, military background, and then I just, between world travels and having families and just dealing with all the issues that come with it, it makes for an interesting amount of depth that people that haven't been there are usually uncomfortable with. And it's nice to be around people that are comfortable with the uncomfortable.
People are boring. Let's just put it that way. It's like, I'm a big believer in the 80-20 principle. It's like 20% of the individuals out there are probably pretty interesting, people I want to know. 80% of the other folks out there, I just don't have time for. And it makes it, and we've talked about this, and I've talked about this with a lot of other firefighters and military and police. We're a special breed. We're sheepdogs, right?
Right.
And that's our job. We're protectors, and we see a lot of stuff that maybe human beings weren't supposed to see, especially on a regular basis. And you can push that stuff down, as heavy as you want to, but at the end of the day, it's only going to be maybe a decade, and it's going to pop its ugly head back up, And so it's difficult, I think, for military, police, and fire to try to identify with the rest of society. You ever been at a party or something where, your wife's trying to introduce you to some people and you're just like, I have nothing in common with these people. Well, how do you know you don't have anything in common? Well, I know because they're not military, police, or fire. So it's impossible, unless they work in an ER or something like that. It's so difficult to even. And I guess that is a prejudgment, but it's so difficult to even imagine how you can connect with those people. It's like their priorities are just different.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, you meet folks that they don't have to make snap decisions that are life and death. They don't look at the world through the same lens as somebody that's in a form of service would. And that's the thing that a lot of guys that I've talked to, their biggest issue is that if you talk about like what does spirituality mean to you, what does a religion mean to you, and what is the biggest thing that brings you joy, and 99 times out of 100, those folks will say service to other people. But if you ask someone that's not been in any sort of civil service, that's not the first answer out of their mouth, and it's not even on the top 10. It's really not.
Right. And I've described it before as kind of, you want to have something in common with the common folk, but it's as if you're at a hockey rink and you're standing on the outside of the glass and you're just watching everybody else have fun. And, you have fun within your circles, but you're watching all these people skate around. You're like, what the hell are these people's priorities? Because they want to talk about, sports and video games and all this kind of stuff. And that's cool. That's cool if you're into that or whatever. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's just hard to identify and talk about that stuff when there's so much other stuff.
Oh, I agree.
So
I think there's a whole world of conversation that gets left unsaid because one, in those circles talking about hard life issues is really frowned upon. It's not socially acceptable to discuss things that would be socially heavy. And then you've got, a lot of guys with moral trauma or traumatic issues that they're trying to work through. You find that you're scary to them, and that's scary because people are so isolated from suffering and death and things that are horrible and unspeakable. And for the rest of us that have done it, it's on the tip of our tongue, and we want to talk about it, but you're pigeonholed.
Yeah, and not only that, and so if we're talking about being at a party, of course, you don't want to talk about these heavy subjects. You want to party. But You know what? The difference is that if I'm at a party with a bunch of firefighters, military, and police, we can talk about whatever it is. But because we know deep down there is that baseline of connection there. Like that just evaporates when you're with everybody else. And that's not to put down anybody else. It's just this is something that I think sheepdogs kind of, if we're allowed to call ourselves that, struggle with is this foundation. It's like I can connect with any firefighter, police, military, whatever, but that level of connection just evaporates with other people. It's like I don't know if I can trust you right off the bat. It's a trust thing, It's like I don't even know if I can trust this guy. Why would I talk to him? Well, you don't know if you don't know if you trust him unless you could talk to him. Yeah, but I know Zach comes into the Play It Again Sports and gives me a hard time, and I can tell he's a Navy guy, and I'm like, I can trust him. And that's not to say all Navy or firefighters are trustworthy, but
yeah, but when you know,
it's a foundation of connection,
right?
So
I think a lot of times it's a behavioral thing that's learned, and for folks in our particular way of life, we find oftentimes that our behaviors don't necessarily match well with our civilian friends, and that we're tend to be a bit edgier and harder, a lot harder. And you've got folks that are used to very light and relaxed and simple and superficial relationships, where folks that are in service to others know that it's at a visceral level where you're connecting, and you got to bare your soul to your brothers and sisters because that's what you got.
You know what? That's a really good point. It's like you don't have to have that fear of what if I say something that offends them. You know what I'm saying? Like for me and you, we can talk and we can say, and you could call me on my bullshit, and it's not going to offend me. We have that level of chemistry, and but when you're at a party and you're trying to meet people and they're outside of our world, you're like, you don't know if you can go to that edge. You don't know if you can go to what you were just talking about. And sometimes, what we do? We go there anyway, and we just detest people, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you got to push that button from time to time,
So yeah, it's super interesting how people connect and how police, fire, and military. It's just easier, man. It takes away that edge, and it's a very unique thing. When we started talking about doing this podcast, I mentioned a few potential titles. And as soon as I said the words or typed the words, how about Animal Mind? You were like gung-ho. That's it. So
yep.
In your world, why did the Animal Mind podcast seem to be like the title?
That's a complex answer, man. I wish it was like, fast and dirty and superficial for you, but I think we both know that that's not true.
No, you can be long. This is long form conversation. Drag it out, buddy.
Um, you know, Seeing the words and then seeing it attached to the logo, it struck a chord with me in that oftentimes that you'll find that people that have come from service tend to stay within themselves, and they see themselves as kind of set apart from others. And I've always kind of called it a reptile brain, and I like the animal mind aspect of it, where you have another gear. It's almost like overdrive, and when you flip that switch and it's on, there's a visceral part of the human experience that other people will never get to experience.
Right.
And to be able to see that as a title and think that we're going to be able to discuss those issues and elaborate on what it's like to have walked that walk and share, what it's like to be vulnerable in those moments and what it's like to come down from those moments. All those things just being captured within that title for me was really amazing. And then on top of it, I hunt and fish like a son of a gun, and I've been trying to get inside of an animal's mind for years, and I still can't figure it out. So it was two of those things that just like hit all the buttons for me.
Yeah, there's something primal about it. And I think that both you and I kind of have a slight obsession with primal nature.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, with you with the hunting, and I'm trying to get into that, but me just trying to push my physical limits and things like that. And we can go back to what you were saying earlier about how you had that blizzard happen up there in New York, and we were talking, and I said, well, that's funny because it was what you said, like 20s or what? I can't remember.
It was 25 below outside, wind blowing about 30 miles an hour. We were getting, I don't know, I think we ended up with a total like 4 foot of snow.
Right on. It was like 38 here, or it was 38 here in Virginia. And I told you that, well, I'm trying to acclimate my body to cold. And, oh yeah, how are you doing that, Pat? Well, I just went outside and stood in my underwear for 12 minutes out on the ranch. Yeah. And of course, my wife, she puts up with the stuff that I do, and she's like, I don't know what he's doing. But I had to do it, man. It was 38 degrees outside. I've been studying this guy, and I was telling you about him, Wim Hof.
Oh, yeah, Wim Hof. Yeah, I started following him on Instagram. Real interesting dude.
Yeah, and if you really look deep into him, listen to some of the podcasts, listen to some of the books and things, he seems to have been able to both physically and put science to this mind-body connection. And I think animal mind is kind of what we're trying to do with that. How do we connect the mind and the body together? What are some of the processes that we can use to really connect the mind and the body? And for Wim Hof, of course, it's the cold and the breathing, and I really encourage everybody to check him out. And so I was trying to try to use the cold as he prescribes, and I'm still trying to do that, cold acclimation, cold showers. We talked a little bit about that. You're a big fan.
Yep.
And, doing the breathing every morning. But I was hiking the trail this morning, the Appalachian Trail, and I got to thinking, why am I doing this? Why have I decided to do this? And what I've come to, so it's the same thing with hiking the trail as with, drawing a bow or, a lot of the things, even when we were playing disc golf, and we were talking about, Zen and the art of disc golf, our brains are moving at 1,000 miles an hour. Just because we're human today, living in 2019, you can't avoid it. I mean, I got an iPhone that's buzzing every time I get an email, and it buzzes on my watch, and you're thinking about home, work life. You're thinking about everything that possibly could go wrong if you're me during the day, which I hate about myself, but I'm trying to fix. But it's like, your mind is just racing, and it's like your body is like, whoa, buddy, calm down, whoa, buddy. So doing these sort of activities for me, it's working out or getting out hiking the trail or going out and shooting some arrows, doing whatever I got to do to get the mind to slow to a pace that the body can actually handle.
I agree with that, yeah.
So I think for me, there's that primal part of animal mind, but I think both you and I are trying to figure out how and what methods to use to get our mind and body to kind of connect.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
And that makes us kind of uncommon. 'Cause most people don't care.
Yeah. No, it takes a lot of self-awareness, and I think that in the world that we live in, everybody seems to be socially aware, whereas most people aren't even self-aware.
Yeah.
So how are you? I use social media, right? And I think everybody does, and if you don't, it's almost strange. But
I wish I could have that life. I'll be honest with you. I wish I could.
It's insane to me to think that you're giving an idiot a megaphone to broadcast a thought. And I am not the smartest guy in the world. I got 10th grade education. Really, I'm not brilliant. That's not what I'm saying. What I mean is that from an awareness standpoint, you have some folks that are just not there. And they're allowed and encouraged even to speak freely. And that's a terrifying concept. Because more often than not, people don't even realize the negative impacts they themselves have in their immediate environment.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you go out and you shoot an arrow, and if your mind is not calm, your trigger finger's not calm, and you're bracing poorly, or you're death gripping your bow, and all of a sudden you're shooting like garbage. But if you can calm down and realize, hey, I just fucking shoot this arrow.
Right.
All of a sudden you're drilling it, and your groups are tight, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, something's here, and you try to capture that response of try to make it muscle memory between your brain to your finger, and how to get to that place of calm. And that's not easy to do in the world that we live in.
Absolutely. So as with social media, how do you handle, say, social media, and how do you bring that into your world, but try to make it so that it doesn't have harmful effects?
Oh, I'm not good at it. So one thing I did is I removed all notifications from my phone, so my phone can't go off.
Right.
After being in the Navy for so long, I got to a point where my phone goes off unexpectedly. It half-ass gives me like a panic attack. I get real nervous because I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Well, my phone's going off 200, 300, 400 times a day. I'm like, can't do this.
I feel the same way.
So I shut all the notifications off. I don't wear like a watch or anything. I stopped wearing a watch. Stopped just cull out of it out, and that helped. But that doesn't stop me from getting sucked into my phone for 2 hours.
Right.
Going down a rabbit hole, and like, look, a chicken. And so that part of it, my wife is really good at letting me know that, hey, get off your phone. But I can sit on my couch and I'm bored to death. But I go outside, throw my phone in my pocket, and throw my gun on my back and go for a walk. I won't check that thing for 9 hours.
Right.
So what's the difference? When I figure it out, I'll let you know, because I really can't figure it out.
Right. And something I was thinking about too, you mentioned, when you're standing there and you're getting ready to fire an arrow, you kind of have to go to that calm place. And when I was hiking on the trail today, the trail that I did 5 miles today from Reed's Gap to Dripping Rock in Virginia. And this was probably the rockiest, most treacherous trail I've ever been on. And because it had rained for about the first half of the trail, all of those rocks were slippery. And I mean, they're jagged, they're sticking up at all different angles. And my feet are going floop, 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 Luckily I had some poles with me, but where my focus was? Don't fall off the mountain. Don't fall off the mountain. And it gets you away from that, this thing that I tell Chris about. And for the first time in my life, I think I described it adequately to her. And it stops the internal voice from going, all day long. So sorry if I just jacked up your volume, but that's what's
cool.
going on in Pat McCormick's mind if I let it. If I don't have focus on doing pull-ups, doing push-ups, firing sticks, walking somewhere, setting some goal and achieving it, it's that constant screaming.
I agree with that 100%. I've always described it as, you ever been in a subway, Pat?
Yes.
When the train goes by, it doesn't stop me. It just goes blazing. Just woo, 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 woo.
Yeah.
And you're standing next to me, you're like, holy shit, dude, I don't want to get sucked into that. That's what it's like for me in my brain, is that train's going a million miles an hour. And every once in a while, I can pluck off one thought.
Right. Yep.
But for the most part, it's going, it's flying. And that's where, for you talking about, same kind of concept. I've always described it as that freight train, and it's coming off the tracks in your head for no reason. It's just going. It's full bore, engines around 100, letting it rip. And then all of a sudden, you get to doing something, and all of a sudden you pluck that one thought. And you stay on that track for a while, and that train, all of a sudden, you don't hear it anymore. You don't feel it anymore. And all of a sudden, you're free from whatever that saber-toothed tiger is that's trying to hunt you down.
Yeah, and I'm trying to learn that too. And I know you were talking about earlier about the Zen things that I've taught you. Basically, I taught you what I read. I didn't teach you what I experienced. Let's be honest.
I just wish you would have taught me how to read.
And a lot of nice bullet points. I gave a lot of people a lot of nice bullet points, and guess what? They work. But they don't always work in every circumstance. Let's be honest.
No, they don't work. That's fair.
And so both you and I had, I think, some pretty distinctive life changes since the last time we podcasted with Zen Disc Golf Podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll tell you a little bit about mine, and then I definitely want you to talk about yours as well. In 2017, I wrote about this when I combined the two books. I don't know if you knew that this past Christmas or I think it was 2 years ago. I dropped another book. It was Discs and Zen, kind of a play on the Jane's Addiction song Pigs and Zen. And this year I dropped the complete Zen Disc Golf. So it was both books plus an additional chapter. And the additional chapter kind of talks about this experience. So in 2017, I was driving home from work on a rainy morning in my F-150, and I was following behind a couple of vehicles. Hey, buddy.
Sorry, Pat. Terrible timing, but
it's all good.
That's Jake.
Hey, Jake.
Can you say hi to Pat? Say hi, Uncle Pat. How would I make it a whole 20 minutes before he found me?
I get you, man.
Go play.
So I actually had to leave town to make sure that didn't happen for me. So I'm actually in an Airbnb right now in Lynchburg. Like I said, in between hikes. So yeah, I was driving home. Cars in front of me, they were following each other really close. I was about 10 car lengths behind. And all of a sudden, the car in front of me put their brakes on, and I thought they were slowing. And it turns out they weren't slowing. They had come to a sudden stop because they were following so close to the car in front of them. So I put on my brakes, and the weirdest thing happened. The truck stopped, right before I would have hit them. The thing stopped. And I can't explain why. It seems like the laws of physics were just knocked out of whack. Because even though the thing stopped, the rear of my truck started spinning into oncoming traffic.
Not good.
I don't know. I don't understand to this day how that happened. Because I had moments where I was looking at the car in front of me, and I that sigh of relief where you're like, oh, thank God I didn't hit him. And then immediately the back of the truck started spinning into oncoming traffic. So I basically was let Jesus take the wheel, and
there you go, Carrie Underwood.
sort of kind of literally, because once the back of my truck started spinning, I felt a hand on my shoulder and this voice in my head saying, I got you, man. That was it. And I remember spinning around several times and then kind of rolling into the Jersey wall. And then I don't want to say I woke up, but it was kind of like a sensation, kind of like waking up, because I felt like I was conscious the whole time. You know what I mean? And I knew that I'd hit the Jersey wall, and I saw this woman running towards the vehicle, and there was a couple guys following her. And she runs up and she tells me she's a nurse. She's going to take care of me until the medics come. She asked me if I'm okay. And I just had this really weird sensation, like I was with it, but I wasn't with it. Like my brain was kind of swimming in my head. I reached for my phone to try to call 911. I know it sounds cliche, but I couldn't remember the number, man. I picked up the phone and I'm like, I don't even know how to work this. I don't know how to work this. So
What is the number?
yeah, so that's how out of it I was. And so she says, "Don't worry about it. What's your name?" And so I said, "My name is Patrick." And so she says, "All right, well, we're gonna call. And do you have anybody that we can call, on your behalf?" And I said, "Yeah, go ahead and call my wife. What's your wife's number?" And so I gave him a number, and they call it. My phone starts ringing. It was my phone number. So, so she.
It's not funny. It's just the circumstances of it all.
It is fun. Well, it's okay to laugh about it now. I wouldn't tell that part if I didn't think it wasn't worth a laugh. But so she says I had a what we call a Class B shirt hanging on my seat because I just left work. And what that is that's basically our collared shirt that we wear our brass with our badge. Like if we were going to a graduation or a funeral or something like that, it had that kind of hang. It's the nice dress shirt for the fire department. And so she kind of grabs it and she goes, "Can I use this to stop the bleeding, stop your head bleeding?" And at first I was like, "No, use anything but that." Then I thought, I can get 1,000,000 of those for free. Yeah, go ahead and do it. And then I thought, what are you talking about, bleeding? I'm not bleeding. I just spun around a couple times and just eased onto the Jersey wall. So that was when I felt the first trickle of blood coming down the left side of my head. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I am bleeding. And at that moment, that's when I realized, how is this lady talking to me through my shut window? So essentially, I had put my head through my driver's side window, and so it was peppered with glass and was bleeding profusely. I was what we call in the medic world, in the medical world, A&O times 1, 2, or 1 or 2 when medics arrived, and what that means is alert and oriented times 2 questions: person, place. And person, place, time, and event. So if you knew all of those things, if you knew the event, you could, say what your wife's name was or who the president is, and then say what day it is or what month it is or what season it is. If you can give some kind of time basis, then basically I was A&O times 1 or 2. I really didn't know what happened, and I knew my name. So I don't know exactly where I fell in that scale. But finally, I saw the fire department go across the other side of the interstate, and I didn't really know where I was. I thought I was in another city, but it said the name of my fire department on theirs, and I was like, okay, my boys are coming. So they came back around, they doubled back, and I saw the first officer arrive on scene, and he ran up to give a scene size up, and he looked inside the truck, and he saw it was me and turned around and ran away. And I turned to the lady, I said, "Get him. He knows me. He knows me." Not that I knew him, because I couldn't remember. I just knew that he knew me. But I
was that guy? What the hell?
I couldn't name him, but I knew that he knew me. Well, it turns out that he ran off because he was freaked out. He thought I was dead. So I found that out way later, and that's probably just because I was bleeding so bad and then just worn out from the event that I probably just kind of slumped a little bit right when he poked his head around. Then another officer came up, and he put his hand in the window and said, "Don't worry, Pat, we're going to cut you out." Somebody jumped in the back of the truck and grabbed C-spine. That's where they hold your head still so that you can't make any movements and accidentally break your own neck, or if you've had any neck trauma, that you won't make it worse. So they actually had to cut the doors off my truck to pull me out. And so they pulled me out, put me on a stretcher. They put me in the back of the medic, and I knew one of the medics, sort of, kind of. They threw IVs in my arms, dual 18 gauge needles in both arms. Did a fantastic job with that. They were really worried about my consciousness, my alertness and orientation. But my head kind of hurt, but my hand really hurt. And I remember I told the medics, because I knew that they were going to do what we call a secondary assessment on me, which is where they do their primary assessment. All right, He's got a head injury. That's probably a significant thing. Is he breathing? Is he, all of that kind of
We
stuff.
called that what?
Do what?
Like H&S Casper.
Do what?
We called that H&S Casper, like head, neck, something else, circulatory, airway, all that stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's like a primary assessment. All of the stuff that keeps you alive. So you're not really worried about, broken hands and feet and things like that. But I knew they were getting ready to start their secondary assessment to find out if I had any further injuries. And so I told them, well, I have some minor pain in my left arm and I have some moderate pain in my right hand. And one of the medics says, sir, because they knew me, I was an officer and they were just being polite. But then they said, sir, with all due respect, I don't give a fuck about your hand right now. I'm like,
but that's the kind of candid answer you get from those folks. First of all, fuck.
So I told them 10-4. So they took me to the hospital, and it ended up, it was really cool, man, because when they wheeled me in, I started kind of coming around. I was maybe A&O times 2.5, 3-ish, something like that. They wheeled me in. I saw a real good buddy of mine who's a police officer and also a tech in the hospital. And he was the one in charge of cleaning all the glass out of my head, which was really, really painful. Because, I had huge pieces of glass that were literally like if you took glass, or if you took, say, birdshot and you shot it into drywall, that's kind of what was going on, or plywood, having to pull all that out of the side of my head. And, in order to do it, they kind of had to get all the blood off and then kind of, shave into it. And then they just had to scrape, man. He just scraped for hours trying to get the glass out of my head. And that was the worst part. Then they did a x-ray on my hand. And my middle finger was broken extremely, extremely bad. I know we say, oh, it's just a broken finger. Well, yeah, it probably should have been amputated. It was broken that bad. But I think I had an overzealous orthopedic surgeon who was like, give me a challenge.
Hey, you lucked out, right?
Yeah. Well, so anyway, so we go through that whole process of getting the glass out of my head. And to be honest, he did the best that he possibly could, but I still had glass popping out of my head a month later. Because it just
that explains why your head's so shaped so weird.
Yeah, it's just kind of it kind of works its way out. It kind of pushes out the foreign objects and stuff. And then I ended up having to have the surgery on my finger. And so I have a plate and 9 screws between the 2 joints on my my finger here. And so I often joke that I'm not even sure if that's my finger, if they put a cadaver finger back on my hand or whatever, because I have a plate and like 9 screws, man. I can show you the x-ray. It's insane. And of course it took me months to make a fist. And I still cannot straighten it out. So I just have this,
I see that.
This wonky finger is what I just call it. My wonky finger. It really impedes typing. It always hit the wrong keys. But, as big into disc golf as I was, I had to relearn how to throw. I started throwing left-handed. I got decent at that, but then I never thought that I was going to be able to throw again. There was some speculation that I may not even be able to go back to my job again because they were afraid I couldn't swing an axe or do something like that. I remember I went back to the orthopedic and I asked him, why didn't you just cut it off? And part of that was that it was the most intense pain I'd ever been in after the surgery. See, they gave me a nerve block and they gave me some medication to go with that. I can't remember what it was, Percocet or OxyContin. It was one of those. I'm apparently immune to one of those. I don't remember which one it was. That's probably good information I should learn. But they gave me the one that I have sort of immunity to and didn't know it, so it didn't work. So when the nerve block kind of wore away and my hand woke up, I felt the entire surgery from my home. It was the worst pain I've ever been in my entire life. It was as if they were chopping my finger up, and there's a lot of nerve endings in there. And, taking like a DeWalt drill and just drilling screws into it. And it was extremely intense. But out of that experience, man, I'm telling you right now, I met God, and a lot of things changed in my life. A lot of priorities were put into place, and for a long, long time, it was I had a lot of things mixed up. It was disc golf, fun, Patrick McCormick, and then it was work, and then it was family, and then it was some relationship with God. And that experience flipped everything on its head. And it said, no, man, I just saved your life. It's got to be God, and you need to put your family right after that. You need to go to work. You need to take care of your business. And if you have time, go have some fun, go play some disc golf. So I took a long time off disc golf, and that's cool. And that's okay. But I ended up developing a lot more hobbies, and I became a more well-rounded individual. And I still enjoy playing. I still enjoy throwing. I still have a 9-hole course out on my property. But man, I'm out there. You've seen me with the bow, probably 80% more often than I am with a disc. I got a shooting range out in the woods too. So I'll take my handgun out there and fire a couple rounds off. But and that just working out and doing that kind of stuff. But anyway, my priorities were flipped, and that was an extreme life-changing moment for me. Started going to church, started taking care of my family. My family started going to church, and we were never churchgoers. But it rocked our world, and it changed our lives. So falling back on some of the things that you said, about Zen principles and Buddha and blue jeans and all that kind of stuff, I think a lot of that philosophy is really excellent. And I think it can bring people a lot of peace, but I think that there is sort of an element that might be missing from that I discovered when I was baptized by sheet metal.
Yeah, I would say so.
It was definitely missing from my life prior, and I didn't even know. So that was my experience since we last potted. Now I know you've had several experiences. Whatever you'd like to share.
Well, firstly, let me just say, glad you survived it. You're a little uglier than you used to be, but I can work through it.
You should see how cool my head looks when I shave it now.
Oh, they're pretty gnarly?
Oh, it looks pretty good. I actually wish they were worse. It's like I went through all this, and I can't have worse scars,
That's great.
But the finger's pretty bad. I could never be a hand model.
When you put your hand up, I was like, oh, shit, I know which one it is. Yeah. That's pretty mangled.
That's an Instagram. Hey, you know what I do with that? Cool. You know what I do with that regularly now in recruit class? Anytime the recruits make an error, like they're not putting a ladder up properly or they're using a Halligan bar improperly, they'll be like, hey, man, don't do it that way. That's how I got this. And it'll be like, really? Because yesterday you said you got it jumping off a truck. And then the next...
hey, the truth is what I say.
Yeah, and then the next day I'm like, hey, man, don't force a door like that. That's how this happens.
I like it. That was a good training tool.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy on the river this last year. His name's Scary Larry, and he's got a bunch of fake teeth that he had knocked out. I assume skateboarding or whatever the case may be, but he'll always tell the customers, there's a T-grip on a paddle, and he'll say, don't let it go because this will happen. And he'll pull his teeth out. He's just got these gnarly gums and busted teeth, and you're like, ah!
Is that what happened to him? Every time. Or is he just making
there's no telling what the truth is with that guy. I texted him. I want to see if he'll come on and talk to us about rafting because he's done a whole bunch of crazy stuff.
Oh, that sounds great. That's what I want to do with this podcast. I want to talk to uncommon people, man.
Oh, he's uncommon. I've done some stuff with that guy that I was like, well, I don't know how I survived it, but here I am. We're going down this spot. It's called the Cruncher. He goes, hey, mind you, we're in a 10-foot raft, and a customer raft is 16 feet. So it's like a school bus. Uh-huh. Hard to crash it, right?
Okay.
10-footer, that's like a ninja crotch rocket. You could lean back. If everybody leans back at the same time, you flip the whole boat over.
Right.
And we're cruising down and getting ready to go into the Cruncher, and he goes, hey, you want to pull over and jump off a 30-foot cliff into a Class 4 rapid? And I go, nah, not really. He goes, I promise you won't get wicked hurt.
Not wicked hurt, just not so wicked hurt.
He's like, you won't get hurt super bad, I promise. And I was like, Now, of course, we're rafting and it's all raft guides and stuff. So we've got a dry bag full of beer in the boat with us, and we're with the crew. There's a lot of folks out there. It's not like we're just out freelancing on this river. Don't get me wrong. We're not going out guns a-blazing. But sure enough, we climb right up on this 30-foot ledge, and we draw straws. And of course, or no, we didn't draw straws. It was whoever could chug their beer the fastest got to go last. Well, I lost because I coughed. And so I had to go first. And I'm like, I've never jumped off a cliff in my life. He's like, oh, I'll be fine. Just go. Get a running start and go. Well, I just slammed my beer and sent it. Hit the water. I swear I went 700 feet underwater, dude. I was underwater for like an hour.
Did he give you any tips, like, to make your body, like, really pointed or keep your hands in or anything like that? Because
I did it just like I was taught in the Navy to jump off a platform. I crossed my arms, crossed my legs. And, I hit the water. And, customers wear these giant Class 5 vests where if you get knocked unconscious, the vest will roll you over and tip your head up so you don't drown. My vest is about this big. So it's about the size of a basketball.
Yeah.
Width on my chest and on my back. And I wear like a real sexy helmet and all this real Gucci like raft guide gear. I go flying in there, come out, and yeah, of course you hit a Class 4 rapid, so you're like fighting your way out of the water. He jumps in behind me, goes, wasn't that awesome? I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty wild dude. So, but anyway, yeah, so, what's happened to me? I don't even know where to start. Firstly, I got to apologize for my voice. I got a cold.
Oh, no need to apologize.
So yeah, if anybody's listening and they hear my voice being all scratchy, I promise I went through puberty years ago. It's not happening again.
That just means you're uncommon because you have a cold and you didn't tap out from the pod.
No, this is the most I've talked all day. This morning I couldn't even talk.
You're the first human being I've seen all day, and I'm seeing you digitally.
I'm sorry that happened to you.
I'm not.
I wish I could have been prettier. But yeah, so in the Navy, I did some deployments, did some fun stuff, got hurt in the process, and just kind of shrugged it off and just, tried to suck it up, which is what you're taught to do. You just suck it up, do your job. And it was only after I had gotten out of the Navy and was, farting around, I realized that I was deteriorating really quickly.
What do you mean by deteriorating?
I started like having issues with balance and being angry all the time, and things were hurting that didn't make sense. I couldn't feel my fingers and my toes.
So physically, yeah. And you said anger, so it's kind of emotionally too. Physically and emotionally.
And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, damn, if this is getting old, this sucks.
Right.
Well, to make a long story short, I met a guy through my son was going to a preschool program, and I had to go on a field trip to old McDonald's farm to go get us to the petting zoo. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do this shit. Like, I just worked overnight like 14 hours. Now I got to go run around with a bunch of 4-year-olds. This is going to suck. Well, I see this other feller, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay. I walk up to him, and he was the guy that my son was really good friends with, his son, and he goes, so what's your rating through the VA? And I go, I've never been. He goes, you're fucked up. We've been hanging out for like 10 minutes. He goes, you're real fucked up. He goes, you need to get help. And I go, what are you talking about? I was like, I'm great. And he goes, you can't stand up straight. And he was like, you need to go get help. And I just like, yeah, whatever, fuck off. Well, we got to be really good friends. And I just kept getting worse.
That sounds like you and me, right?
Funny how that works. Yeah, you'll meet him. You'll love this guy. His name's Ralph. He's a great dude.
It's like you're retelling the story of you and I meeting.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny how that works. Yeah?
Full circle.
So time goes on, and we get to palling around, and I'm getting worse. And we go fishing one day. I just can't get it together. I fucking threw my rod. We're just losing my mind.
So you're fishing with him.
Finally, yeah, we were out fishing, and me, him, and another guy, and I just couldn't catch a fish. I kept snapping my line. Just got pissed. Threw my rod, and my outdoor equipment's pristine. Like, I take care of it better than I probably take care of myself. And finally, he just grabbed me, put me in the truck, and he was like, you're going to a fucking therapist right now. And that's where we went.
So he took you right there.
Yeah, so we ended up going. I met a social worker. His name's Ken Price, great guy. I started working with him, got stuff going through the VA. found out that I have, excuse me,
Mhm.
I have broken bones in my skull
Mm.
that are affecting my equilibrium. I got an MRI coming up to determine the amount of scarring and bleeds on my brain.
And when did
On my
that happen?
the injuries
Yeah.
on deployment. I had 3 concussions in the span of like 2 weeks, and I lost consciousness on all 3.
Okay.
But I was a team medic, so I was just like, I just brushed it off, do your job.
Are you able to talk about, I mean, exactly what,
Oh
how
yeah,
you
yeah.
got concussed?
The first one wasn't even cool. I was just walking, I slipped and fell, smashed my head on the ground. I hit a rock and just went out.
Okay.
It only rains in the country that I was in like twice a year,
Uh-huh.
and when it does, it's like apocalyptic, and it's all clay.
Uh-huh.
So it turned into like ice almost. Best way I could describe it. And just slipped and fell, smashed my head, and I was messed up from that one pretty bad. I couldn't walk good.
Mm-hmm.
My head was pounding. I just couldn't even stand up. I was sick. And then I had another one where I jumped from a building to another building, and the building was riveted.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it. And when I hit, I rolled my ankle, and I was going down, and I tried to tuck and roll. Well, I caught the rivet with the top of my head and knocked myself right clean out. Those were about a week and a half apart, and then about 3 days later, I went on another mission, and I was driving up over a hill, and the hill dropped off like almost 90 degrees, and the front of the vehicle slammed down. I hit the bridge of my nose on the steering wheel.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see that. So you have your MRI coming up.
Yeah, so I gotta get that squared away. My C3, C4, C5, and C6 are all degenerative, which explains why I have weak grip and my fingers are numb and they hurt all the time and that kind of stuff. My shoulder, I blew out one of my knees on deployment. That wasn't even a good story. I was playing frisbee and just like caught too hard and blew the sumbitch right out. I had the mindset of a lion and the body made of paper mache.
Right.
So
it's funny what you said about like the C5, C4, C3, like causing your hands to be numb. Because my wife has started experiencing that. She had a sort of a minor car accident, but I guess it was enough that she has a what do you call it, like a bulged disc now.
Yeah.
And so for the past 6 months, she's complained that her hands have gone numb. And, trying to figure out exactly what it is. Of course, she's having the neck and back pain, but now she has to have surgery. And that's upcoming. Did I tell you about any of that? No,
we hadn't talked about it. I know she got in a car accident, but I didn't know she had surgery coming up.
Yeah,
they didn't offer to do traction therapy for her.
Oh, they did. She went to a chiropractor once a week for 5 months, and then she also did physical therapy for the past 2 months or something like that. But then when she went back to the MRI or to the doctor to get her MRI, it ended up showing up, and it's pretty clear. They're pretty the X-rays or the MRI is pretty conclusive. You can look at it and go, "Wow, that's jacked up." But even as a medic, I never thought about it, and I know it absolutely makes sense. Is that your hands getting numb and stuff from back injuries, but it's just interesting. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're cool. And then so I've got some injuries to my lower back as well, but I haven't investigated those yet. And VA is really slow, and I don't even have insurance at this time, so it's not like I'm going to run right out and get one. I have to put in through. I'm medically retired through the VA, and I have to get through their insurance, and it's the VA, so it can be cumbersome. Everybody I've dealt with through the VA has been really good to me. I'm not going to knock them. I've had a wonderful experience. It's just, it's slow, it's bureaucratic, it is what it is. If you go in with no expectations, you're not going to get upset. If you go in expecting them to turn you into the Bionic Man, well, you get what you get.
Right.
So, and then all those things, between the head injuries and then just, seeing some stuff downrange, it led to PTSD issues,
right.
Which is not a death sentence. You get that label slapped on your forehead and people take it like it's a death sentence, and they think it's like an artistic license to be an asshole.
Really?
Yeah, bad. Yeah, and I don't believe in that. People are like, I got PTSD. I don't play or I don't play well with others. No, you're just using it as an excuse to be a dickhead. Huh. There are some folks that, hey man, you know what? I get it. You don't need to be around people. not knocking those guys, but there are some folks out there that just take it too far, and I don't prescribe to that.
Right.
I'm not a dysfunctional veteran. I'm not an approachable guy. I'm really not. But at the same time, pretty easy, amenable to a lot of things, and PTSD is just a behavioral issue, in my opinion. And you have to relearn behavior, and the only way that you can really get ahead of it is to be aggressive in your pursuit of mastering those behavioral skills. And until you do it, and you take ownership of it and say, I'm the asshole, and I got to fix this shit myself, and then there's no magic wand, and I got to do the work emotionally and mentally and physically, you just don't get better.
Right.
You can get all the pills in the world that you want. Don't work. And don't get me wrong, I take medicine for depression, and I'm glad I do. I've never felt better in my life. My wife said to me for the first time in 10 years we've been married, she goes, it's really nice to see you happy for the first time.
That's awesome. Well, so, you threw yours out there, and I have no problem being vulnerable with mine either. We've talked about it many times before, that I'm diagnosed with PTSD as well. Mine's actually CPTSD, which is complex PTSD, which is something I had never heard of until the therapist said that this is what I think you have. And then I went and read the symptoms of it, and I'm like, yep, that is exactly what I was telling him, basically reading the symptom sheet to the guy. So yeah, that's something that you and I can kind of align with. High five, PTSD.
Yeah, and I look at it this way, Pat. I treat PTSD like an injury. You got to rehab it. It's your brain, it's your behavior, and people don't want to treat their brain like a muscle. And if you take the time to do the work, you will get better. I'm not saying I got it figured out. I'm not saying I'm even better, but I've been doing it for 2 years, and I've made progress, and I'll take that.
Yeah.
It's not a death sentence. It doesn't have to hang over your head. You just got to do the work.
Yeah.
And that's the part of it that people don't want to do it. And I can't understand it, because I've said it to you before, and just in conversation of talking about perceptions and framing diagnosis like that, is if you broke your leg in half right now, you'd have no problem going to physical therapy, but nobody wants to go to brain therapy.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
What, am I a crazy guy because I went to therapy? No, I'm trying to be aggressive about maintaining a positive mental attitude and being a functional member of society and having a good, wholesome relationship with my family that's not negatively impacted by a diagnosis, which is really just stems from being switched on, from being in survival mode.
Yes. Yes. Kind of like that animal mind thing, kind of like that whole, like when I used to go in and talk to, therapy, and I would say, this is how I feel. I feel like my animal brain runs me. I feel like I live through my amygdala. And, I had been to a couple therapists before 2017 because I had the depression issues as well. But it wasn't until after my accident that different other things started to affect me. It's kind of interesting how you describe it too, because you ended up with these possible head injuries, or now they are actual head injuries, brain injuries, that you sustained your way. And then of course I put my head through a window of my vehicle.
Just trying to be a show off.
Yeah. And well, I don't know. You had more than I did. You had more. You did more reps.
I just love it because you can be like, oh man, I feel like I got hit by a Mack truck, and nobody can argue with it.
Hey, and I didn't even, I forgot to even say that that's what ended up happening. I didn't know until I was in the hospital that I was T-boned by a dump truck. That's why I put my my head through the window. I was telling my story from the perspective of I didn't know it yet. Then I got to the ER and I totally forgot. Yeah, I got hit by a dump truck. Anyway, so you have reps. I just have weight. That's all there is to it.
Either way, you're flexing the muscle, bro. It's just not necessarily one you want to flex.
Both of them are intense. But what's interesting, and I didn't know this until I started reading up after they told me that this is what's going on with you, because I just went to therapy because I just said, I want to know what's wrong with me, man. What do you mean what's wrong with you? Well, I just don't ever feel... I just feel, as I was doing before. That's how I feel on the inside. And unless I have some kind of practice for that moment when I'm firing a bow, or when I'm out there doing pull-ups or push-ups or whatever I'm doing, for those moments, the voice quiets. But then I walk back in the house and there it is again. So I'm like, I want to do whatever I got to do to get this figured out. But head injuries. So a lot of times people have this underlying foundation of PTSD that they're handling, they're managing, and they don't even know it. And then there is a positive connection, apparently in the studies that show that once you're hit in the head or you have significant head injury, that you can no longer handle what you've been handling for so long. So it's interesting. Both of us have that going for us.
I agree with that. And Ken Price actually said what you're trying to do is you are living in a constant state of hyper awareness.
Right.
Based on a need for survival, and what you need to do is you got to go from being hyper aware to just regular aware. Still keeping all your skills sharp and being aware of your environment, but you don't need to be like super mega kill mode.
Yeah.
And that is a learned habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That takes reps. That's like if you're working on your biceps, you got biceps day. If you're doing tries, it's tries day.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to do hyper awareness day and just chill, and that's a learned skill through
I need to work on
shooter bow or doing pull-ups. And it's hard, dude. It's perishable.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm out on the trail, because it's a long-term rep. It's a long distance of time, 4 to 8 hours where I can't focus on the screaming. I have to focus on my footing, so it's like a walking meditation. But yeah, the survival mode thing, that's exactly what I went in and told the therapist. He says, well, why are you here? Because I can't find joy. There's no joy. There's no excitement. It's like even when you wake up on Christmas morning, you're trying to survive. Every moment is about survival. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it's so great that you brought up Christmas morning and survival.
Yeah.
This year for Christmas, my daughter walked in and grabbed me by my throat and started shaking me. Merry Christmas. I think she thought it was like my chest, and she grabbed me because I'm so ripped, And so she grabbed me by my throat, and that's how I woke up on Christmas Day.
Trying to survive.
Yeah, trying to survive Christmas. I was drinking vodka soda at like 6 a.m.
Well,
it was just like, all right, I'm going to calm down here, fellas.
Well, and Bryce, that's my son. He's on the autism spectrum. You know that. Yep. But so he's what they call. So there's 3 levels to the autism spectrum: 1, 2, and 3. And they got rid of the whole Asperger's distinction, and they went to the numbers. Incidentally, from what I understand, they got rid of the Asperger's diagnosis and went to the spectrum system because I believe that Dr. Asperger was a Nazi, and that didn't look too good.
Yeah, it's not funny. It's just like, what are the odds, dude?
So they went to the number system. So he's right down the middle. He's 3.5. He's nonverbal. And 80% of the time, he's the most loving little boy. Like for an autistic child, he loves people so much. He doesn't really know how to communicate with them. And so that's something that is going to take a ton of work. But one of the things about Bryce is that he has no pain. Like nothing hurts this child. And of course, me and my animal mind, I'm like, this kid is awesome. He can fall with the best of them and stand right back up and keep going. And he's strong as hell. And the bad thing about that is he doesn't understand that other people feel pain. So he beats up my wife and I every day. So did you ever watch the Pink Panther? Mm-hmm. Like the movies?
Yeah, with Steve Martin?
Well, yeah, that was the remake, but they had the one with what's his face? French guy.
Oh, I know. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Ones. So he had that guy that was his butler that he taught to fight him whenever he got home. Remember that? So every time he'd open the door, he'd be ready for a fight, And so that's kind of how my household is. I kind of open the door and, I go into that karate stance waiting for this child to run at me and headbutt me in the groin.
You're just coming into the house with like a Game 7 mindset. Like, this is what we play for.
Yeah, and I'm going, My mind is doing that, and then my child is, beating me up. And I mean, like I said, 80% of the time, he's the most loving, most affectionate little boy. That 20% of the time, he is a Tasmanian devil. He's nuts. He's off the wall, man.
I will say this. That is a predicament that I have never been in. But I can say this. I'm as much as I try to be a glass half empty guy, That does sound like it can be a hell of a lot of fun from time to time.
There is some comedic relief.
Like, you just can't. Like, if I were sitting on the couch and I watched him torpedo you, I would die of laughter.
But yeah, and I'm sure from the outside looking in, it's probably funny. But you know, from the inside looking out, we're talking about that waking up in survival mode.
I agree.
It's like I've got the voice in my head screaming, and I've got Bryce screaming, and I'm waiting for violence to happen.
Talk about a Monday, brother.
I'm going to the woods.
Yeah.
I'm going to the woods. I'm going on a vacation. So, yeah.
No, he sounds like a sweet kid. I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah, you saw him when he was a baby, right?
I did. I met him when he was just a little guffer.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
He's getting tall. So, and you have 3 kids.
I do, yeah. My daughter's 8. Her name's Lily. And my oldest boy is Lucas. He's 6. And my youngest is Jake, and he's 2.
Right on. You have a goof troop.
Oh, yeah, there's big differences in personality. They're all very interesting. And now my dog is coming up here now, my puppy that Ashlyn got me as a retirement gift. Bear, Basset Hound.
Bear?
Yep, Bear. And I don't want to make too many jokes about mental retardation, but he's pretty close. He is the dumbest animal I've ever met in my life. I don't say that lightly. I put a lot of thought into that. I never met anything quite as dumb. You know, you get a new dog, right? And I've owned several dogs. I have a great dog. His name's Watson. He's a Schnauzer. These dogs are eager to please. They want to do what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
They want to please you. They want to work. He's a ratting dog, so he's got a high drive. He wants to work.
Mm-hmm.
Bear, on the other hand, no. Just, nope. They can't control their bladders or their rear ends until they're almost 9 months old.
Really?
So he will have an
accident.
Is
that just that breed of dog, or is that... I'm not a dog guy.
Yeah, and I know. And so he's been a neat, interesting, like, kind of a test of patience. Like, right now, he just burrowed himself under our bed, so I'm going to have to take the mattress off to rescue him shortly.
That's awesome.
You know, so, but he's also very emotional.
Uh-huh.
And they don't do well with negative enforcement. So dogs are masters of association. Uh-huh. Some dogs need positive reinforcement. Other dog, you whoop his ass one time, and he'll do what you want. It doesn't work with him. You can't hit him.
Okay.
So you have to be nice to him because they get their feelings hurt. Like, he gets, like, upset. And you can see it on his face. Like, he's emotionally upset. So you have to be, like, tender with him.
Man, that's just like Bryce. It's just like Bryce.
I'm not going to compare your kid to my dog by any means. All I'm saying is that I think about hitting him with a bat more often than I should. So I got a buddy he's a well-known houndsman. He's one of my cousin's husbands. He's a great guy. He's probably the best outdoorsman I've ever met. This guy is a houndsman like you wouldn't believe. This guy knows dogs better than anybody I know. Mm-hmm. And we were out running dogs one day. He was doing what he calls puppy power. And he's got these 2 males, and he's running them. And this dog kept coming back, and he kept coming over to want to play with me. And he's like, the dog knows that he's getting away with something right now, because he said, if you weren't here, I'd kick him in his nuts. And, of course, I started laughing.
Pete is going to love this show.
I would have kicked him in his nuts. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was just like, that sounds so brutal. And then I got Bear, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. So I have 2 dogs and a cat. I have a rabbit and 2 guinea pigs.
Holy moly, you got a farm.
Yeah, and we don't live in a farmhouse, brother.
Meanwhile, I do live in a farmhouse, and I have no animals except for a 3.5-year-old.
Any kid that age is an animal. You'll see. Wait till you meet Jake. This kid's a monster.
And I'm sure my wife would say I'm an animal too.
My wife.
That poor woman.
My wife gets madder at me for having more hunting equipment all over the place. She's like, is hunting season ever going to end? And the short answer to that is hard to the fuck no. You know, if somebody was looking and I turned my video camera and I pointed it to the far side of my 3rd floor is one open floor, and that's where our bedroom is and our office and all that stuff. Uh-huh. I have one corner of the room, and if you looked over there, there's just hunting shit piled on hunting shit.
Wow.
But that's my reprieve. That's my thing that I do that quiets my mind. Is it fun to go outside when it's 10 below and sit in a snowbank and try to call on a fox? No,
Yeah.
no, it isn't. But does my mind get really quiet and focused on trying to find an animal that's the size of a soda can
Right. Right.
and trying to shoot that animal in the dark?
Right.
Yeah, it's hard.
Well, it takes focus. You can't be, your mind has to be there. It can't be anywhere else, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I did that project. You saw the pictures of me painting my rifle the other day.
Yeah.
It took me 3 full days.
Right.
Little things like that. I'm not even good at art. I can't even draw a straight line with a ruler.
Oh, it looked amazing, especially when you put it up against a tree. That was kind of my joke there on Instagram. Why did you take a picture of a tree?
That shotgun turned out good.
Yeah, it did. Look good. So your primary, as far as hunting, I know you're really into turkey hunting. Would that be your number one hunt?
Oh yeah, I love hunting turkeys, man. That's my favorite by far. For an animal with a brain the size of like a quarter, they're just unbelievably smart. If they could smell, you'd never kill one. Their survival instincts are the best of any animal I've ever come across. They only see in 2 dimensions.
Okay.
So everything they see is flat.
Okay.
So you have to stay still. You can't move because what they do is they bob their head back and forth, and that
Oh,
allows them to pick up movement.
is that why they do that?
Yep. Well, and they can hear extremely well. They can come. They'll come to your call from 500 yards away and walk right up to you.
Uh-huh.
Bear. And so they call them the 20-pound feathered elk,
Okay.
and they're hard to kill. You think it'd be easy? It's to call a shotgun a turkey into shotgun range is no simple feat. You do run into some dumb ones they're like kamikaze birds.
Mhm.
And those are fine, but man, it's the wily ones. I've got one bird I've been chasing for 3 years. I can't kill him.
Really? We have,
Same bird.
I mean, we have them out on on my ranch, and I may see maybe one or two a year. But like when it snows and I go out in the woods, it's like, is there a dinosaur that lives back here? Because their feet.
Yeah, they got that tri-claw deal.
Yeah, and it's like there's a pterodactyl back here or something. But deer, on the other hand, man, deer, there's not a day that goes by that I do not see 10 deer. Every single day I see 10 deer, at least, at minimum. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The only time I don't see that is during a hunting season when they're running the dogs. That's the only time. And then I might see like 2 deer. The rest of the time, it's like 10 deer every single day.
Dude, and I'm a huge deer hunter. We had folks at church that came up to my wife and they were like, pulled her aside and like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, why?" And another lady went and got in the middle of it. She's like, "No, you don't understand. Her husband's a deer hunter. He's not available. They're busy." and it really is. I mean, it's a holiday for my family. All the males and even the females. I mean, it's hunting season rolls around and it's like, well, we'll see you at Christmas.
Nice. Well,
and we run flat out from September 27th to December 14th. It's every day.
Nice. Well, I look forward to you coming down to the place. And
well, I'm hoping to come down there in May and turkey hunt with you. I'll bring all my gear down and we'll get after it.
Awesome. Sounds good.
It's the most frustrating endeavor that you'll ever have fun doing.
Okay. So when you're hunting them, do you track them first, and then, I mean, like, what's your methodology? Because hunting. So I know about hunting deer, sitting in a tree stand. I know I know a little bit about that, but as far as hunting turkeys, it's not something I'm privy to.
Hunting turks, the best thing you can do is just kind of scout them and walk around and look for sign. Once you figure out what tree they're sleeping in,
okay,
you go in just before dark. And you call to them before dark, and they'll talk while they're in the tree. And the next morning, you go in and set up on them, and hope they come to you. The more land you can have access to, the better. Because if one bird won't cooperate, you just roll into the next spot, and you run and gun all day long. And you're fortunate you can hunt sun up, sun down there. We can only hunt till noon here.
Yeah, it is cool being able to like hunt year round, sun up, sun down. I mean, all day long, whatever, because it's my land. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, I'm jealous. I really am. You guys get some of the best predator hunting in the world down there, hunting coyotes, fox, and bobcat.
Oh yeah, we got coyotes, we got fox. There have been bobcat. I'd say a little bit to the west of us. I haven't heard of any in the county, but if they're to the west, then they're probably in our area too. So there's this little zoo that kind of is trying to open up. Just maybe I want to call it blocks, but it's not real. We don't have blocks where I live. It's actually in another village, but it's maybe within 1 mile from my house. So in my county, it's got a whole bunch of villages because we don't have neighborhoods, but it's essentially that's what they call it. They put a post office there, call it a village, and so the next village over, this lady moved in. She used to live in Chesapeake, but she had all these wild animals that she had started rescuing, and she had like a monkey, and she has alligators, and she has a bobcat, and she has like all this stuff. Well, apparently somebody I guess she was charging admission, but it was kind of a nonprofit kind of situation she had down in Chesapeake. But I want to say somebody was poisoning her animals or being cruel to her animals, something like that. That she had to get out. So she moved. Land is cheap where I live. That's why I have it there. I'm by no means rich, but so she came down our way, and so she's setting this place up, and it's not open to the public. And part of the reason that is because they're still building the enclosures for these animals. Well, my joke always is with Chris, if any of those animals get out of her enclosures, they will populate because our area is so wild. I said, it's bad enough I got to go out, and carry just because of coyotes out in the woods. Now I'm going to have alligators and monkeys and bobcats and stuff. So hopefully
I'll tell you this right now, if I walked out in the woods in the Adirondacks here and I ran into an alligator, the last thing that alligator would hear is yeehaw.
Well, man, I've been drinking this AK coffee, this Black Rifle coffee.
BRCC makes good coffee.
This is the most intense coffee, and because it's not late at night right now for most people, but for Pat McCormick, it kind of is. But I wanted to be able to stay up and stay energized for the podcast. My leg has not stopped bouncing this entire time from this AK coffee. Now, most coffee doesn't do that to me anymore because I'm used to the strong stuff, but I'm hoping I can get to sleep. I got 12.8 miles to do tomorrow on the trail. And then my family's meeting me up here for 2 more days, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I want to say have a safe trip on the trails, and I also want to mention for anybody listening that Pat doesn't drink coffee legally qualified as cocaine. The first cup of coffee I ever had at Pat McCormick's house, I went into cardiac arrest, and I immediately went outside, ran 40 miles at 70 miles an hour to the zoo and chokeslammed a rhino, and was back in like 8 minutes. It was insane.
Yeah, so when I say it's bad, it's bad. So, by the way, that coffee that I fed to you over years and years of doing it that way, it made me tired. When I drank it,
I made me tired. I just started thinking about it. My hair stands up.
I just got so immune to it. So I think what I have to do now is I have to cycle different coffees through my system and keep it cycling, because that coffee that I fed you was Bustelo, and I just had it so often, so many, like, I don't know, a pot and a half a day or something like that, of that for 4 years, 5 years, something like that. It just wore off. But I do the Black Rifle Coffee Club, and they kind of cycle it for me, so I don't even have to think about it. So
that's good.
Yeah. Hey, maybe they'll pay us to advertise since we're doing it for free.
Hey, if that's the case, hopefully First Light calls, and then maybe, I don't know, Nemo equipment. I don't know, nothing major.
Well, Zach, I appreciate you joining me for the episode 1, and it's been fun and entertaining. I'm really looking forward to more episodes, bringing more folks on here to talk about being uncommon individuals, and I hope this recorded, to be honest with you, because I don't think I hit the little red circle. But I think it automatically does it. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on episode 2.